pop that.
This video is going to be about the 2000 Ford Mustang GT twin turbo 2 valve that I had purchased from my friend on the East Coast, and we had it shipped all the way here to the Midwest. And what was meant not to be so much of a project turned into a project, and here's why. The car sat for 4 years. It was dynoed at 630 horsepower, but I wanted to run it on the dyno again and retune the car because there are larger heads put on the car and some other parts, so I wanted to make sure that the fuel maps were all dialed in correctly before beating on the car or anything like that. So watch this video. If you have a turbo car, maybe you can relate. I got it back from the shop and they said, oh yeah, it's typical of what we see, 2-valve Mustang pushing with the twin turbo kit, blah blah blah. They didn't think it was a big deal, but anyhow, I brought it in the garage to change the lifters and cam followers, and during that I wanted to take off the front bumper. I had a feeling something was wrong, and I noticed some shaft play in one of the turbos when I was replacing the filters, so it stemmed into this whole can of worms. So follow along, maybe you can relate, maybe not, but anyhow, if you want to see more of this car, just like and subscribe, and I will be sure to upload more videos and let you guys know like where it's at and how things are going. So alright, so here's the turbo. I had already taken it apart. This is a 67mm turbo. This is the one on the passenger side. The signs that I initially seen were some black on the inside of this turbo housing. Now, after taking it apart, you can see that there was some rubbing from the compressor wheel on there, which was initially caused first by the in and out shaft play. So this thrust bearing is also bad. There's some significant wearing, and it wore into the backing plate on the for the turbo housing. So this is a journal bearing turbo with a aftermarket compressor wheel. I'm going to send this out to a place in Miami, Florida. I believe it's in Miami, to get rebuilt, rebalanced. And you can see on this dyno sheet here, this up and down here, which could have been caused by a number of different things. So there's this problem, but I also found a vacuum leak on going up to the boost solenoid from a dry rotted line, so all these lines need to be replaced. That could have caused this fluttering to happen here too. It was 551 horsepower and 540 torque, which, having a few bugs I think to need to be worked out, that's pretty good. If you check this line out, going straight from the oil pump to the turbo, you know, you got your oil lines going to the turbo. That is actually zip tied right above that, which is a horrible place because there's a lot of exhaust going in and out of there. When that valve opens and closes, this is obviously gonna get hot. This wastegate, there's a valve in there that moves up and down, and as that moves up and down, it gets hot, and it's making the oil from in that line even more hot before it even gets to the journal bearings on the turbo. So that probably accelerated the wear on this side of the car. I hooked up this line here from the wastegate. This is the line that goes to each wastegate here, and it's just one line that splits off into two, of course, and it goes up to the boost controller right there. What I did was, this is really generic here, but we're only going to run about 10 to 20 psi through this line, so no big deal. I did tape. Yeah, that's all I did. You see what I did? I don't even want to admit what I did, but you can see what I did here. So that is painter's tape. Now we're just gonna put a little bit of see if I can do this with one hand. I probably can't, but I'm gonna try like hell here. Let's see. All right, ready? Now, okay, now as I put pressure into this hose, there's not much pressure into this. There's not much air pressure going in here. You can already hear it leaking out of here. Now, this is my problem. This is not going to be everybody else's problem when it comes to a turbo car. You know, there's so many variables. Ultimately, dry rot. You can see how bad that was. And inside of here, it is really like it was bouncing around for a while. And the shop did not catch this that I brought the car to. But is it their fault? No, it's more or less my fault for not checking it before I brought it there. But since it was my first turbo car, like real turbo car, I just didn't want to mess with anything, and I wanted the professionals to handle it. Unfortunately, not every shop you go to is going to be professional, and their customer service is going to vary widely. Alright, so we already got all the parts back for the Mustang. The only thing I was really worried about was the turbo, of which I just sent down to Boost Lab Incorporated out of Tampa, Florida. That's who Turbonetics actually recommended, these guys, so that's who I went through, and they answered all of my questions, no matter how dumb they may have sounded to them, and followed through with everything really quick. Sent it on Monday, got it Friday, and now let's go over the parts and see how this build goes here. So what they had to do was the backing plate, replace that. T3, T4 housing, they replaced that. They machined the inside of this wheel a little bit to take out those grooves that which I had showed you before, as well as the whole compressor wheel needed to be replaced. So that's all around that. We also got the trick flow lifters, which doesn't necessarily need it, but there's a tiny tick that was just irritating, so we're gonna put those in. Got some new line for the boost solenoid and things like that. We're not going to use all of this, just parts of it and the reason why. And we got some new filters because that's important. Unfortunately, they're cheap eBay filters, but this should do for now. I wouldn't recommend them, but it's all I can afford right now. Right now I'm going to roll a real quick clip. Listen for the flutter in this car. I forgot I had this clip. So listen for the flutter in this car and watch when it kicks in right about now. Now if you heard on that video clip right there, you'll hear around 3,500 RPM, which would be right around here. It started to flutter quite violently, and you could even tell when it's under wide open throttle, under throttle, you could hear them wastegates opening and closing. It's also important to remember that when you have a car that has a turbo that's going out, aside from shaft play, you're also going to get a lot of oil bypassing in those bearings. So the oil is going to end up in your intake tube, and it's going to coat your mass airflow sensor with oil, and it might not idle well. So that could be another sign and symptom to look out for. So if you like this video, please smash that like button, and if you want to see more of this car, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, Jerry Jr.'s Garage. I've been into cars and bikes and ATVs all my entire life. I'm always working on some kind of project. This car is going to be interesting. I'm not sure what kind of power it's going to put down when it's done, but we're shooting for 650 to 700 wheel horsepower, but we will see. Maybe that's wishful thinking. So anyhow, again, subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching.